Hey, what's going on, YouTube? I'm dropping this video. It's all about water, and it's focused on consciousness. And it kind of just goes in detail about how consciousness permeates through basically everything. But here we're gonna focus on water because a doctor, he made some really neat observations, and his observations, you learn a lot from them, and they really make you think deeper into life and give you faith about what everything means. So first, before we go into the video, let's talk about how strange and how weird and how mysterious water is. If you really think about it, water is really strange. Water seems almost alien to this planet. And even some of the so-called experts, some of them believe that water comes from somewhere else in space. Like, for example, a comet. You know, comets are made of ice and radiation, and some people have even theorized that comets have in the early development of Earth, comets came through the atmosphere, vaporized, and filled the oceans. But if you look here at this picture, it's a picture of a glacier, and it's huge, it's enormous, and it's floating in water. And this glacier is much more dense than the water, but yet it's floating. Now you take something else, for example, a rock. It will not float, it'll just sink to the bottom. So a rock would be more dense, but it won't float. But when water turns to ice and becomes more dense, it floats. And it's mind blowing if you really think about it. Water is really alien. Water is considered to be the universal solvent. Water can erode and disintegrate pretty much anything. Some really powerful stuff. And, it's amazing. They even say without water, no life could be. And the status quo, the theory of how the earth came to be, was that it began with the earth somehow getting water. And after it getting water, somehow it getting algae. And photosynthesis happening with the algae. And that's where the earth got the oxygen. And oxygen created an ozone layer. Ozone layer made the earth more habitable. Animals somehow emerged in the ocean, somewhere in there, and animals left the ocean and went on to land. And I said the land animals, we emerged 10 to 20 million years ago. And that's supposed to be a 4 billion year story. That's the status quo. And the whole point of that is to say they say it all began with water. Now with us, they say we start off in life 99% water. And over a course of our lives, let's say if we make it to old age, this number reduces down to 50%. That's over a lifetime. If we live the average lifespan, we lose half of the water we come into the world with. So it's like the body's just dehydrating, 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 dehydrating until the end. Now, I talk about these things not to segue into consciousness really, but just to kind of illustrate like how mysterious and how misunderstood and unknown water is and its nature and its purpose here. So let's go ahead in the video and talk about water and signs of it being able to contain and have consciousness.
What's up, world, YouTube? How y'all doing out there? I'm just out, relaxing, listening to the waves. So, this video is going to be about water and consciousness. But I'm not really hung up on water having consciousness. I'm more hung up on the bigger implications of what this could mean if it's completely what it appears to be. So I'm going to lay the video out like this. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the makeup and the energetic dynamics of water. It's not going to be anything complex. It's going to be really straight to the point and quick. And then from there, I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to pretty much focus on this person and what I learned from him. I'm going to talk about how he was fascinated with water and ran lots of experiments on water. And eventually, through his experiments, he came to the realization, or he came to his own conclusion, that water was indeed conscious. And I'm going to talk about some of the experiments that he did and what the results of these experiments were. And kind of talk about what they meant or what they may mean. I mean, you'll be able to come to your own conclusion. It'll be pretty easy. It's not anything complex or complicated, just interesting. And then lastly, I'm gonna talk about nature and other governing, organizing principles of existence, of life, of this world, and how nature affects water and water's consciousness. And lastly, I'll wrap the video up by talking about the power of spoken words. And spoken word it's relative to what I'm talking about here, because that was one of the experiments that was used by Dr. Emoto. All right, so let's get started with this video. Now, what is water? Water is basically a crystal. And what's a crystal? A crystal is something that if you put it under a microscope, you'll see uniform patterns, repeated uniform patterns over and over. And when we think about crystals, you probably think about a rock or a stone or some type of jewelry or something like this. you don't really think about water unless we're talking ice. But what else can a crystal do? Crystals also have the ability to absorb energy. Crystals are used by many different people for holistic reasons, for varying reasons. Because of them knowing that crystals have the ability to absorb energy. And the type of energy that crystals can absorb depend on the type of crystal that's being used to absorb energy. And water is a crystal. Keep this in mind. Water is a crystal. Now, water, its composition, it's an electronegative oxygen, electropositive hydrogens. Because of this composition, water is really free. Water has lots of freedom. It's very free. It can do lots of things. It's very changeable. It's very adaptive. Because that oxygen can give and receive those hydrogens freely with other water molecules. So it gives it that ability to be really free and move and flow. Now, many different factors affect how water changes itself, how water evolves. And one factor is temperature. When you lower the temperature and you turn water into ice, then water's crystalline nature, characteristics, becomes very apparent. It's easy to see. And let's talk about Dr. Emoto, Masaru Emoto now. Dr. Masaru Emoto, he was fascinated with water. And he really wanted to know some of the deeper secrets of water. He wanted to really know about it. So he studied water a lot, and he did experiments with water, and he in one of his experiments or his observations that he made with water, at one point he would take photographs of the crystals that would form from water. And what he realized after just taking these photographs, I guess initially he thought that the crystals were just pretty. So he just took photographs for that reason. But what he came to realize was that the crystals were very different from one another. And we all know that, if you take like a crystal such as a snowflake, all snowflakes are different. No snowflake is the same. But what Dr. Emoto realized, one of the first things he realized was that he did experiments where he took water from this place and water from that place, and he compared the water. And what he realized, one of the first things he realized was that water from natural places crystallized really well and really perfectly. And water from unnatural places, water that was polluted, tap water with things like chlorine and fluoride and additives like this to clean the water didn't crystallize well. So after this observation, he kept going. And he did other tests. And upon recommendation of his colleague or friend, he did a test where he did something that seemed just like something playful to do, but he wrote words on the containers and observed the effect of putting words on containers of water and how that affected water crystallizing. And what he found was that the nature of the words had the biggest effect on the water crystallizing. For example, water with positive, well-intentioned, cooperative, collaborative, peaceful, positive nature words crystallize really well, organized really well. And words that were of a negative nature tended not to crystallize that well. So Dr. Emoto, he kept going. He looked for other ways to test what he found. And he used things like showing water photographs of pictures. He used things like playing music to water to see the effects. He did things like simply speaking words to the water and observed the effects of that. And what he found was that it was the same thing. The water with the positivity put into it, it made the water crystallize better. It had a positive effect on the water's ability to crystallize. And waters with the water with negative intent, negative words, negative feelings, it did the opposite. And he also influenced lots of other people to do their own experiments to test this out. He really wanted to bring this type of thing, this type of awareness to a lot of people. He didn't just keep it to himself. And again, I'm not so hung up on water having consciousness. I'm more hung up on the effect of our mind, our intentions, our thoughts, our vibrations affecting other people and affecting the world and making an impact on the world. And I'm thinking in regards, or I'm thinking like putting a drop in the ocean and that drop traveling forever. What type of imprint is that drop gonna have on whatever it crosses? So let's talk about how nature affects the consciousness of water, or how nature influences water, or influences the way water crystallizes. Now, we're talking consciousness here, and we're kind of putting it side by side with water's ability to crystallize, and also, you know, water crystallizing carries energy. So those are the parallels that I'm getting at here. But if you think about nature's effect on water. When nature is in contact with water, nature is one of the organizing principles of life. It's one of the nature is organized by the universe. And we follow the organizing principles of nature. So the observation that I took from this information upon learning this is that following the organizing principles of nature makes things much easier for you. Anything you do, it makes it much easier for you, following these organizing principles. And what I also took from this is that positivity, love, kindness, things like this are universal law. It's one of the guiding principles of nature, of the universe. Okay, so I'll wrap this up by talking about the power of spoken word. Now, words. He did experiments where he used words to see how words would affect the water, and he used words. Words are powerful. Words are more powerful than a lot of us realize. And words are a way to put out our vibration into the world. It's one of our biggest, strongest ways to put out our vibration to the world. Dr. Emoto, he talked about, he had like a theory of where words come from. And I thought it was really interesting, so I'll share it with you now and I'll wrap this up. He said that words come from nature. And remember, nature is one of our overlying organizing principles. Words come from nature. And what I mean by words coming from nature is that back in primeval times, a long time ago, when, in the beginning maybe, human beings had to transfer the vibration of nature, or what they experienced through nature, to someone else. And I'm talking about communication here. And their life depended on this, on their ability to do this. And this was the origin of the first words. People interpreting nature to one another. And as time went on, people realized that there was strength in numbers. And as numbers increased, more words increased. Language evolved. And as groups turned to neighborhoods, communities, civilizations, language evolved more and more exponentially with that. So my point of saying all that, and the message from all of that, is that words come directly from nature. Words express the vibrations of nature. And I'll wrap the video up by mentioning something that I forgot to mention. One of the main things that he talked about that is also pretty interesting too, was that words that carry the strongest level of vibration were words like that reflected gratitude and love and gratitude. words of that nature seem to have the highest vibration. And another thing that I failed to mention from his experiments was that an action that was stronger than negative words or negative intent was simply ignoring. Ignoring the water that was ignored did even worse than the water that had the negative intent or negative vibration within it or exposure. So with that, I just want to say I love you and I appreciate you, and I hope to see you around in the future because there's a lot more coming. We're gonna dig really deep, and hopefully we're gonna take it into really, really deep water. Thank you so much. I'm gone.